Tim, you have emphasized that while you don't want to facilitate or encourage or affirm drug use, you don't want to begin the relationship with the child by categorizing them as broken, wrong, criminal, addicted, inhuman, subhuman, but rather want there to be an awareness that there's a cause for this, a cause that you have landed on, but with the words, fill the void. Tell us a little bit more about what from your studies, your experience, your teaching, informs your notion that at the core of most young people's experimentation with substances and worse, there's a yearning to fill the void.
Well, I think I touched on this in certainly the bigger presentation today, that we all come from this ancient community of, the word I like to use, of indigenous culture, where we were given the gift of real direct mentorship from birth. And sometimes that direct mentorship, often that direct mentorship was not our parents only. It was members of our tribal community. And typically the first representation or first introduction of a substance was done so in some type of very deep, ceremonious, very intentional, very specific format. And what it did is it was meant to be a bridge between the human condition and the spiritual condition. The filling of the void, that void of the question, why are we here? I think in our culture today, we have created an amazing, we hear it often, interconnectedness, yet separation beyond anything we've ever had before. Young people can get on their devices and connect very directly one another, and yet they can't have a conversation. They'll literally be sitting in the same room texting their conversation. That's a void for sure. We know this, we've seen this, we've all experienced it. And it's getting worse and worse. It's getting more dramatic. So I believe that substances, again, to not vilify the substance, nor certainly the individual, substances do a very effective job of filling a void within the human condition. And I can say that unequivocally from my own personal experience. I can say that unequivocally from the thousands of people that I've worked with in treatment who have found their own way of articulating pretty much the same thing. Why do we use substances? Because they're effective at filling something inside of us that we can't seem to connect to otherwise. Until, for those who wind up needing the services of an addiction treatment center or a professional or simply a recovering community, they begin to find and begin to peel back that there's something to also fill that void. There's a life experience in the circles that we travel in. There's a faith experience. There's this direct experience of God. For a lot of people, for a lot of young people, that's a concept that's very difficult to grasp. I think is why we struggle so much in youth ministry, getting our youth to show up in a sense. But the void itself, I believe, is that God-sized hole. We hear that so much. I've heard it in so many ways. And I think what's also really important about this communication and this awareness with the kids is, and I think this is where 12-step fellowships have created a masterful approach, is let them come to their own terms and not be so structured in how we deliver the terms of their relationship with that very personal entity in their life. That presence, that energy that will fill the void once they seek it. We certainly should give them parameters. We certainly should encourage, just like we did in our old ancient ways. But we have to address that if we're not having these very specific rites of passage and holding those experiences very closely as a community, their kids are going to create them on their own, and that's what they do. So if we're going to step into that role, let's step into it wholeheartedly, compassionately, and address that there is this God-sized hole in all of us. And it's the hope of everyone in ministry to connect one another to that fact. And guess what? God fits perfectly in that hole. In fact, better than perfectly, because once we have it, it's overflowing. That connection is very hard to lose once it's present.